January 17, 1944. A gray dawn settled over the rolling fields of Normandy. Mist clung to the hedgerows, hiding shapes in the shadows, and the soft rumble of engines broke the morning silence. Across the narrow lanes, a column of American Sherman tanks moved with precise rhythm, their tracks chewing through mud, each vehicle a fortress of steel. Inside, crews hunched over controls, listening intently to the faint static and crackle of their radios, voices exchanging orders with uncanny speed. German scouts on the ridges above caught glimpses of the tank's silhouettes but could not fathom the coordination hidden within. Each Sherman's commander spoke, and miles away, others heard instantly, adapting their maneuvers in real time. For the German infantry and Panzer units, this invisible network was unknown, a silent advantage that would dictate the unfolding battle. Dust rose behind advancing tanks, mingling with the acrid scent of spent gunpowder. Every decision, every maneuver, every suppressed shout or whispered command mattered, yet the enemy remained blind to the force steering them. This hidden communication would become a decisive factor, shaping the fight before any shells even struck the fields ahead. In the early years of World War II, armored warfare was rapidly evolving. Nations poured resources into designing tanks that could dominate battlefields, but technology alone did not guarantee victory. By 1942, the United States had entered the conflict with a recognition that modern warfare demanded more than firepower and armor. It required coordination, communication, and speed. The Sherman tank, officially designated M4, emerged as the backbone of American armored forces. It was not the heaviest or most heavily armed tank on the battlefield, but it carried a feature that would prove transformative: a sophisticated radio system. These radios allowed crews to communicate seamlessly across multiple vehicles, enabling coordinated movements that could overwhelm German positions before they had a chance to respond. The Germans, still relying on older, limited communication methods, often found themselves reacting to situations instead of dictating them. The disparity was subtle at first, almost invisible. Yet, in skirmishes across North Africa and later in Sicily, American units began demonstrating a fluidity of action that confounded experienced Wehrmacht officers. Soldiers recalled that orders seemed to appear out of nowhere, and tanks would shift formation with a precision that suggested preternatural awareness. Behind these maneuvers was nothing mysterious, only a network of radios connecting tank to tank, crew to crew, commander to commander. This invisible web allowed commanders to see the battlefield in real time, issuing adjustments and executing tactics that relied on coordination rather than brute force. It changed the psychology of engagements. While German crews measured strength by the weight of a tank's gun or the thickness of its, officers noticed the difference only when it was too late, attributing American success to luck or morale rather than a deliberate technological advantage. But every American soldier understood it. The unseen currents of communication were the lifeblood of their operations. As the war in Normandy approached, these lessons would be tested on a massive scale. The Allies were preparing for an invasion that would challenge the best-trained German units, and the Sherman's radios would play a decisive role. For the men in the tanks, every beep, every crackle, every snippet of information represented survival, opportunity, and a chance to control the chaos that raged around them. By the time German units fully realized the nature of this advantage, the battle had already shifted. Sherman tanks moved like synchronized predators, striking, retreating, and regrouping with a precision that appeared impossible to their unconnected opponents. The quiet power of these radios, often overlooked in histories dominated by armor and firepower, would define a new era of armored warfare, one where information flowed faster than bullets, and coordination became the deadliest weapon of all. By 1944, the European theater was poised for a clash of unprecedented scale. The Allies were preparing Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history, and every component of the assault demanded meticulous planning. Armored units, particularly Sherman tanks, were assigned critical roles: to breach fortified positions, support infantry, and exploit any gaps in German defenses. Unlike the Panzer divisions, which often depended on visual signals, runners, or fixed telephone lines, the Americans could coordinate entire battalions through their radio networks. Each tank commander could relay enemy positions, request artillery support, or adjust formations without leaving the safety of their arm. Ordholes. This ability to think and act collectively transformed the battlefield into a fluid environment where decisions cascaded instantly across units. For German commanders accustomed to rigid hierarchies and slower communication methods, these maneuvers were confounding. Reconnaissance reports arrived piecemeal, often too late to prevent flanking attacks or concentrated artillery strikes. The Sherman crews, on the other hand, were connected to a digital rhythm that synchronized their movements. Training emphasized not only marksmanship and gunnery, but also communication discipline. Crews were drilled to respond promptly to radio orders, maintain clarity under stress, and anticipate commands before they were issued. This focus created an invisible cohesion, turning disparate vehicles into a single adaptive force. Beyond the battlefield, the industrial capacity of the United States amplified this advantage. Sherman tanks were produced in large numbers, equipped with radios as standard rather than optional equipment. Whereas German production struggled to maintain parity in both quantity and technology, the Americans were fielding units that combined reliability, mobility, and real-time coordination. The cumulative effect of this strategy was profound. In engagements across Normandy and later during the push through France, Sherman units executed maneuvers that seemed almost prophetic to German observers. Tanks appeared in unexpected positions, responded rapidly to ambushes, and supported infantry assaults with near-instantaneous coordination. Reports from German prisoners frequently mention frustration at the Americans' ability to concentrate force unpredictably, an effect rooted in the very radios the enemy had ignored. The radios also empowered leadership at multiple levels. Platoon leaders could make tactical decisions informed by the movements of adjacent units, while battalion commanders monitored the broader battlefield. This decentralized decision-making, mediated by communication, contrasted sharply with the German reliance on centralized command, confidence born not just of training or courage, but of connection. Even in moments of chaos, the flow of information reassured them that every tank was aware of its role, every commander listening and responding. German forces, meanwhile, faced the paradox of fighting an opponent whose strength was both visible and invisible. They could see the armor, the guns, the advancing column, but the true advantage, the seamless coordination, remained hidden until it was too late to counter effectively. As the days of fighting in Normandy stretched on, the significance of these radios became increasingly apparent. American forces could exploit terrain, outmaneuver defensive lines, and sustain offensive pressure in a way that the Germans struggled to anticipate. What might have been a conventional tank engagement turned into a battle of information, timing, and adaptability, with the Sherman's radios as the silent orchestrators of action. Every successful maneuver reinforced the lesson. In modern warfare, knowledge and communication could outweigh armor and firepower. The stage was set for a series of confrontations where the hidden advantage of the Sherman would shape the course of entire operations, leaving German commanders scrambling to understand a force that seemed always one step ahead. The human element of the Sherman's radio advantage was profound, though subtle to outsiders. Inside each tank, crews operated in cramped, noisy compartments surrounded by steel, engines, and the smell of oil and gunpowder. Communication through the radios became an extension of their senses, a lifeline connecting them to comrades and commanders. A gunner could focus on his target, confident that his commander's instructions were immediate, while the loader anticipated shifts in movement before they happened. This invisible connection reduced panic and hesitation, critical factors in the chaos of combat. Soldiers later recalled that even in ambushes or artillery barrages, the steady flow of information gave them a sense of control. They could act decisively, knowing other tanks would cover flanks, suppress enemy positions, or coordinate withdrawals without verbal confirmation. The radios humanized the machinery, turning metal boxes into responsive units that mirrored the crew's instincts while amplifying their effectiveness. In moments when shells screamed past or men fell, that connection between tanks provided reassurance and trust, a bond invisible to the Germans, who could only witness the coordinated results without understanding the mechanism. The technological superiority of the Sherman radios lay not in complexity, but in reliability and integration. While German tanks sometimes relied on outdated, limited-range radios, the Shermans were equipped with units capable of multi-channel communication across battalions. These systems functioned under the harshest battlefield conditions. Static, mud, vibration, and even direct concussive shock could not easily sever their links. Radio operators were trained to maintain clarity, reduce interference, and relay information efficiently, ensuring that orders traveled instantly between units. This network transformed tactical planning into dynamic action. Commanders could synchronize maneuvers in real time, direct fire support precisely, and respond to German counterattacks with unprecedented speed. The radios also enabled data sharing across terrain obstacles, hedgerows, and destroyed villages, elements that normally fragmented battlefield awareness. The result was an armored force that moved cohesively, coordinated as if guided by a single mind, creating operational advantages invisible to the enemy, yet devastating in execution. Tactically, the Sherman's radios reshaped engagements from the ground up. American units could execute flanking maneuvers, concentrate fire, and adjust formations on the fly, all without the delays that hampered German responses. Reconnaissance information reached tank commanders, and infantry could be supported with calculated precision, and artillery strikes were called in exactly when and where needed. This tactical fluidity turned otherwise static or predictable operations into adaptive, unpredictable campaigns. German commanders noted with frustration that American armor appeared everywhere at once, repositioning to meet threats and exploiting openings faster than defensive units could react. The radios transformed battlefield geometry, extending the commander's reach and compressing reaction times to a level German forces could not match. Coordination became the invisible weapon, one that allowed superior positioning, faster engagement, and a psychological edge over opponents who lacked the same capability. Leadership on the battlefield was transformed by the Sherman's radio network. Commanders at every level could make informed decisions with a clarity previously impossible in armored warfare. Battalion and company leaders monitored movements across the field, issuing orders that responded to real-time developments rather than static plans. This decentralization allowed lower-level officers to act proactively, confident that their actions were aligned with the larger strategy. Decisions that once took precious minutes to communicate could now be executed instantly, giving American units an operational tempo that German forces could not match. Commanders could shift formations, concentrate fire, or exploit breaches as they occurred rather than waiting for confirmation or visual signals. This fostered a culture of initiative and responsiveness, where leadership became less about rigid hierarchy and more about orchestrating a symphony of coordinated action. The result was a force that felt anticipatory rather than reactive, capable of adapting to the unpredictability of war while maintaining cohesion. From the German perspective, the Sherman's advantage was largely invisible until it was too late. Experienced Panzer officers observed the Americans' coordinated maneuvers with mounting confusion. Tanks appeared where they were not expected, flanking attacks struck with precision, and defensive positions were overrun before reinforcements could arrive. German reconnaissance and intelligence often failed to reveal the secret behind this fluidity. Without understanding the role of radios, German forces attributed success to luck, superior numbers, or morale, underestimating the underlying technological edge. This unawareness led to miscalculations and delayed countermeasures. Even elite units struggled to anticipate American movements, and the psychological strain of facing an enemy who always seemed one step ahead eroded confidence. The radios were not just equipment, they were a hidden multiplier of effectiveness, invisible yet decisive in shaping engagements. The moral and psychological impact of this advantage on both sides was profound. For American crews, knowing that they were connected, informed, and capable of immediate coordination instilled confidence and reduced the chaos of battle. Fear was mitigated by certainty. Every tank was not alone. Every commander had eyes and ears across the battlefield, and support could arrive instantly. Conversely, German soldiers confronted a paradox. The enemy's coordination seemed almost uncanny. Confidence gave way to frustration, hesitation, and eventual demoralization. The unseen nature of the advantage amplified its effect. Germans fought an opponent whose strength was not fully visible, whose decisions appeared prescient. This psychological edge, combined with tactical and technological superiority, contributed to a compounding advantage that shaped the outcomes of countless engagements. In this way, the Sherman's radios became not only instruments of communication, but instruments of morale, trust, and strategic dominance, silently redefining the rules of armored warfare. The morning of June 13, 1944, marked a turning point in the hedgerow battles of Normandy. American forces had landed nearly a week earlier, and the terrain, dense with thick hedgerows, proved a formidable obstacle. Sherman tanks, often slowed by the tangled earthworks, faced fierce German resistance, yet the radios inside each tank transformed the chaos into coordination. Platoon leaders issued orders while simultaneously monitoring the movements of neighboring units, artillery positions, and infantry advances. Every Sherman became aware of threats and opportunities far beyond the line of sight, a networked intelligence that German commanders could neither see nor counter. At 0700 hours, a battalion of Shermans encountered a fortified German strongpoint near the village of Carentan. The German defenders had laid mines and machine gun nests designed to halt any armored advance. Traditionally, attacking such positions required careful reconnaissance, staggered infantry support, and time-consuming maneuvering. But American crews, connected by their radios, executed a complex flanking operation in real time. One commander relayed enemy positions. Another coordinated artillery fire on a forward nest. Infantry called for smoke to obscure movements. Within minutes, the Sherman column repositioned, engaging multiple targets simultaneously and forcing a rapid German retreat. Observers noted that the tanks moved almost as if guided by a single mind. German officers, watching from concealed positions, could only marvel at the fluidity, misjudging it as a stroke of luck rather than the product of meticulous communication. The radios allowed a division of thought and action. Every tank responded to the unfolding scenario, yet each remained in perfect harmony with its formation. The attack highlighted the Sherman's unique advantage. While German tanks relied on line of sight and delayed orders, the Americans leveraged instantaneous updates to maintain the initiative. A single misstep by the Germans could be, and was, exploited before reinforcements could react. By midday, American forces had captured key positions and established a corridor for further advancement. Reports from the field emphasized the contrast between the connected Americans and the reactive Germans. Crews recounted that they could adjust their maneuvers based on real-time radio updates, supporting each other with precise timing that minimized exposure to enemy fire. Casualties were lower, and momentum was maintained where disjointed attacks might have stalled. The psychological effect on both sides was striking. American soldiers felt empowered, coordinated, and confident, while German troops faced the demoralizing realization that their opponents operated with a level of awareness and responsiveness they could not match. This engagement was not unique but emblematic of a broader trend across Normandy. Sherman tanks consistently outmaneuvered German units, not through armor or firepower alone, but through communication-driven coordination. By 1800 hours, after continuous skirmishes, the Americans held strategic high ground, and the German forces had begun an organized withdrawal. The radios had allowed Sherman commanders to maintain initiative, dictate the flow of battle, and mitigate the risks inherent in hedgerow fighting. Without this technological edge, the engagement might have devolved into costly attrition warfare, but the radios provided a decisive force multiplier. As night fell, Sherman tanks regrouped, radio channels buzzing with updates, casualty reports, and plans for the next day. Commanders assessed positions, coordinated with artillery, and adjusted movement paths, all in real time. For the Germans, there was no comparable system. Decisions were delayed, often asked on incomplete information, and defensive lines were compromised before they could be reinforced. The Battle of Carentan, though a single engagement, illustrated a broader truth. The Shermans rad. The aftermath of the Normandy hedgerow battles revealed the profound impact of the Sherman tanks' radios on both immediate operations and broader strategy. American forces had not only captured key positions, but had done so with a level of coordination and efficiency that the Germans had never encountered. Casualty reports indicated that units operating with clear communications suffered fewer losses, as crews could anticipate danger, adjust formations, and call for supporting fire without delay. Infantry units reported feeling a renewed sense of security when encountering the Shermans, knowing that each tank was connected to a larger network that could respond instantly to threats. The Germans, meanwhile, faced a stark reality. Their doctrine, emphasizing army firepower and entrenched positions, had been insufficient against an opponent who relied on information superiority. Debriefings of Panzer commanders frequently noted frustration at the Americans' ability to appear simultaneously in multiple locations, respond to attacks with precision, and coordinate artillery and infantry without hesitation. The disparity between the two sides extended beyond immediate battlefield results. It reshaped operational thinking. American divisions began to recognize that communication could multiply the effectiveness of every weapon, while German units were forced into reactive postures, attempting to plug gaps that had already been exploited. Equipment losses also highlighted the tactical advantage. Sherman tanks, though not the heaviest, sustained less damage due to coordinated maneuvers, while German vehicles were concentrated into kill zones orchestrated by the Americans. Intelligence gathered after engagements confirmed the role of the radios in these outcomes. Orders and updates transmitted in real time had enabled commanders to maintain initiative, preempt counterattacks, and allocate forces efficiently. This was particularly evident during coordinated flanking maneuvers and rapid advances through difficult terrain, where the ability to communicate instantaneously determined success or failure. Beyond the tactical and operational effects, the psychological consequences were equally significant. German troops encountered an enemy whose movements seemed prescient, sowing confusion and eroding morale. Conversely, American soldiers, confident in the reliability of their communications, approached combat with decisiveness and trust in one another. The radios became a silent, omnipresent factor that shaped the human experience of battle. Strategically, the implications extended into the broader Allied campaign. The success of radio-coordinated Sherman operations validated doctrines emphasizing integrated, responsive armored formations. Commanders could plan offensives with the expectation that units would adjust dynamically to unforeseen developments, a flexibility that rigid, line-of-sight dependent German units could not match. Reports sent back to headquarters underscored the importance of communication infrastructure in future operations, influencing the design and deployment of armored units across Europe. In essence, the aftermath of these engagements revealed a shift in the nature of armored warfare. Victory was no longer determined solely by armor thickness, gun caliber, or individual bravery. It was increasingly defined by the speed, clarity, and reliability of information flowing across the battlefield. Sherman crews had demonstrated that coordinated action, enabled by advanced radios, could decisively shape outcomes, reduce casualties, and impose a tempo of operations that German forces struggled to counter. By the end of the Normandy campaign, it was evident that this unseen advantage had contributed to the broader momentum of the Allied advance, setting new standards for how mechanized forces would operate in the remainder of the war. The broader consequences of the Sherman tank's communication advantage became evident as The aftermath of the Normandy hedgerow battles revealed the profound impact of the Sherman tank's radios on both immediate operations and broader strategy. American forces had not only captured key positions but had done so with a level of coordination and efficiency that the Germans had never encountered. Casualty reports indicated that units operating with clear communication suffered fewer losses, as crews could anticipate danger, adjust formations, and call for supporting fire without delay. Infantry units reported feeling a renewed sense of security when accompanying Shermans, knowing that each tank was connected to a larger network that could respond instantly to threats. The Germans, meanwhile, faced a stark reality. Their doctrine, emphasizing armor, firepower, and entrenched positions, had been insufficient against an opponent who relied on information superiority. Debriefings of Panzer commanders frequently noted frustration at the Americans' ability to appear simultaneously in multiple locations, respond to attacks with precision, and coordinate artillery and infantry without hesitation. The disparity between the two sides extended beyond immediate battlefield results. It reshaped operational thinking. American divisions began to recognize that communication could multiply the effectiveness of every weapon, while German units were forced into reactive postures, attempting to plug gaps that had already been exploited. Equipment losses also highlighted the tactical advantage. Sherman tanks, though not the heaviest, sustained less damage due to coordinated maneuvers, while German vehicles were concentrated into kill zones orchestrated by the Americans. Intelligence gathered after engagements confirmed the role of the radios in these outcomes. Orders and updates transmitted in real time had enabled commanders to maintain initiative, preempt counterattacks, and allocate forces efficiently. This was particularly evident during coordinated flanking maneuvers and rapid advances through difficult terrain, where the ability to communicate instantaneously determined success or failure. Beyond the tactical and operational effects, the psychological consequences were equally significant. German troops encountered an enemy whose movements seemed prescient, sowing confusion and eroding morale. Conversely, American soldiers, confident in the reliability of their communications, approached combat with decisiveness and trust in one another. The radios became a silent, omnipresent factor that shaped the human experience of battle. Strategically, the implications extended into the broader Allied campaign. The success of radio-coordinated Sherman operations validated doctrines emphasizing integrated, responsive armored formations. Commanders could plan offensives with the expectation that units would adjust dynamically to unforeseen developments, a flexibility that rigid, line-of-sight dependent German units could not match. Reports sent back to headquarters underscored the importance of communication infrastructure in future operations, influencing the design and deployment of armored units across Europe. In essence, the aftermath of these engagements revealed a shift in the nature of armored warfare. Victory was no longer determined solely by armor thickness, gun caliber, or individual bravery. It was increasingly defined by the speed, clarity, and reliability of information flowing across the battlefield. Sherman crews had demonstrated that coordinated action, enabled by advanced radios, could decisively shape outcomes, reduce casualties, and impose a tempo of operations that German forces struggled to counter. By the end of the Normandy campaign, it was evident that this unseen advantage had contributed to the broader momentum of the Allied advance, setting new standards for how mechanized forces would operate in the remainder of the war. The broader consequences of the Sherman tank's communication advantage became evident as Across multiple units, Germans struggled to concentrate forces effectively. One account from the German High Command noted the frustration of trying to predict American movements, describing engagements where Shermans appeared simultaneously on flanks and front lines, striking with coordination that defied expectation. The radios had not only amplified the effectiveness of individual tanks, but had multiplied the operational reach of entire divisions. Units that might have operated independently now functioned as cohesive elements of a larger network, enabling rapid exploitation of gaps, flexible support for infantry, and timely calls for artillery strikes. The result was a cascading advantage. As one unit achieved success, the information transmitted via radios allowed nearby formations to adjust in real time, reinforcing breakthroughs and consolidating gains. This integration of communication and maneuver marked a turning point in the conduct of armored warfare. It forced German commanders to reconsider defensive doctrines, highlighting the vulnerability of rigid command structures and the limitations of armor when isolated from a coordinated system. Even elite Panzer divisions, trained for speed and concentrated strikes, found themselves reacting to threats rather than dictating engagements. The effect extended beyond immediate battles. Operational planning now accounted for the enhanced situational awareness provided by Sherman communications, shaping the pace and scope of subsequent offensives. Logistics, reconnaissance, and artillery coordination all benefited from the instantaneous sharing of information, allowing commanders to optimize resources and reduce delays that had previously hindered armored units. The psychological dimension remained significant. German troops facing an adversary whose coordination seemed almost prescient often hesitated, second-guessed, said movements, or withdrew prematurely. American crews conversely developed confidence in their collective capacity, knowing that each vehicle, each commander, and each supporting unit was integrated into a living network of action. Reports from after-action reviews emphasized the human and technological synergy enabled by radios, crediting them with reducing casualties, improving operational tempo, and sustaining momentum across successive engagements. Ultimately, the hidden advantage of the Sherman tank's radios reshaped the strategic landscape. They enabled the Allies to maintain pressure, exploit weaknesses, and advance with efficiency that German forces could not match. By the time German commanders fully comprehended the significance of this unseen force multiplier, the operational and psychological damage had already been done. The outcome of Normandy and subsequent operations underscored a broader truth. In modern armored warfare, the flow of information could surpass raw firepower as a decisive factor, turning communication into both weapon and shield. The Shermans had not merely fought, they had orchestrated, and in doing so, they had redefined the rules of engagement for the remainder of the war. The story of the Sherman tanks in Normandy illustrates a profound truth about warfare. Victory is often determined not by size or firepower alone, but by the unseen currents that connect soldiers, machines, and commanders. The radios inside each Sherman transformed isolated vehicles into a cohesive, responsive force, allowing crews to act with precision, confidence, and speed. These devices, small and silent, became the invisible architects of success, turning ordinary armored units into instruments of strategic dominance. For German soldiers, the advantage remained a mystery until it was too late, creating a psychological gap as decisive as any physical disparity on the battlefield. Yet the significance of this innovation extends beyond a single campaign. It foreshadowed a new era in military doctrine, where information flow, coordination, and adaptability